Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile, the podcast. This is episode 231 called Arielle. And now a word from our sponsor. Attention all aspiring fertility coaches and those on their own fertility journeys. Are you ready to take charge of your dreams and create a pathway to parenthood? Introducing the Fertility Coach Academy certification, the ultimate program designed to equip you with the skills and knowledge to become a successful fertility coach. The focus at Fertility Coach Academy is the holistic well-being of individuals and couples on their fertility journeys. They address their emotional, physical, and spiritual needs through the proven Creation Continuum Foundation approach. They also provide comprehensive business coaching, helping you build a thriving practice and make a real impact in the lives of those struggling with fertility challenges. The Academy understands the challenges of the conception journey. That's why they also offer personalized one-to-one coaching packages with internationally renowned fertility coach Elizabeth King. Elizabeth's mind, body, and spirit approach through the Creation Continuum uncovers hidden blocks, empowering you to achieve your goal of parenthood. For all of you Infertile listeners, here's the best part. A special 25% discount on the Fertility Coach Academy certification or one-to-one fertility coaching is available to you now. Just mention the code INFERTILEAF when enrolling and you'll receive this exclusive offer. Ready to turn your passion for fertility into a purpose-driven career? Visit fertilitycoachacademy.com. You'll be empowered to make a difference while embracing the mind, body, and spirit approach. Or are you seeking personalized guidance on your own journey? Visit elizabethking.com. Unleash your potential and unlock the doors to parenthood. Remember, guys, use code INFERTILEAF on both of those for your special 25% discount. This podcast is sponsored by Receptiva DX. Receptiva DX is a powerful test that has helped thousands of women who have experienced recurrent pregnancy loss or IVF failure. The test helps detect inflammatory conditions of the uterus that might be preventing you from becoming pregnant or staying pregnant. The most common underlying condition of a positive Receptiva DX test is endometriosis, with or without symptoms. If you or someone you know has struggled with IVF, Receptiva DX may give you the answer and treatment protocols that you're looking for. Talk with your doctor about Receptiva DX because the journey is so worth it. Plus, guys, Infertile listeners are getting $75 off the Receptiva DX test. So all you have to do is go to receptivadx.com or download the app Receptiva DX, use code INFERTILEAF23, and you'll get $75 off. Thanks, Receptiva DX. Okay, guys, today I am talking to a really dynamic, smart, and driven woman. Her name is Arielle Bogorad, and she is Progyny's SVP of Employer Market Strategy and Services. So in 2017, Arielle was diagnosed with unexplained infertility, and after more than a year of trying IVF drugs, she was told she was a poor responder to them and would have a hard time achieving chromosomally normal embryos. How many of us can relate to that? So today she's going to tell us her entire story, her whole family building journey, and she's also going to tell us about all the cool things that she's doing at Progyny, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. So without further ado, this is Arielle's infertility story. Hi, Arielle. Thank you so much for doing this. It's great to meet you.
Yes, likewise. It's great to meet you too, Allie.
Yes. So I always start at the beginning with my guests and family building stories. Did you always want to be a parent and be a mom?
Yes, since I was little, I've always loved kids and wanted to be a mom. I was a mother's helper when I was 11 or 12, and then I became a babysitter shortly thereafter. In high school mock elections, I was nominated for 2 awards. One was most likely to succeed, and the other was Future Mom. And then I ended up winning Future Mom.
Get out.
So that's funny. Yeah. And then when I was in undergrad, I volunteered at a university affiliated nursery school. And just basically, I've always loved kids and I've always looked forward to becoming a mom myself.
Okay. I always love to ask too, what did you know about your fertility growing up? Because so many of us have found ourselves in these, shitty situations, not knowing about our bodies, not even knowing about ovulation or actually what it takes to get pregnant. Like I was so clueless because my fertility education was just like, don't get pregnant. It's so easy to get pregnant.
Don't get pregnant. That's right.
So what did you learn?
To be honest, like I don't remember sex ed at all. I have absolutely no recollection of it, if it even occurred. And like growing up, I didn't think much about my own fertility. Just the same thing as like, don't get pregnant. That was especially before marriage, like just don't get pregnant. So then to me, that meant it's probably pretty easy. If everybody's worried about, getting pregnant, then it must be pretty easy to get pregnant.
100%. I felt the same way. And I remember actually asking in like health class in one year in high school, it might've been freshman year. Like I was so clueless. I was like, can you get pregnant from like giving a blowjob? Like I didn't even know the basics, which is just like so embarrassing. So
it is. I know it is. And I don't even remember health class. It's so strange. Like I can't even visualize sitting there. Certainly not a conversation about sex. So.
And a lot of people don't even have it. They just kind of skim through it. So well, let's fast forward. How did you meet your husband? And you mentioned your husband and I both went to University of Illinois.
Yeah.
And you grew up in Michigan, right?
I grew up in Michigan. He grew up in Illinois. We were older when we got married. We were both the last of our close friends to get married. We met on Match.com. And then we both actually worked at the same employer here in Kansas City, but we didn't know one another. We probably wouldn't have ever met like at work because we worked in, it was a big company and we would never have crossed paths. But yeah, we met on Match.com and kind of the rest is history.
How soon after you guys got together did you start talking about family building and, trying to have a baby?
Yeah, we started speaking about it pretty soon. We met in like May of 15. And we started talking about it. We were both the last of our close friends to get married. And two of my closest friends from undergrad, they had infertility struggles when they first tried to get pregnant when they were around 28 years old. And I was just shy of my 38th birthday when I got married. And then in the back of my mind, I always wondered if I would have issues given my age. But my story actually has a professional twist as well. So I can segue there for a moment.
Yeah, go for it.
So from 2010 to 2020, I had executive responsibilities for worldwide benefits and well-being programs and services at a Fortune 500 company. So what does that mean? I led a team that was responsible for determining the benefits that we offered across 25 countries around the world. And in the US, that included a $250 million health plan when it was at its peak. But up until 2017, we didn't cover fertility services. We only covered the underlying diagnosis, and that's it, which is not much. And our associates had been asking for fertility coverage for some time, but we hadn't found the right partner. That is up until the spring of 2016. And that's when I was first introduced to Progyny, and my colleagues and I evaluated it. And in my role at work, I was tasked with pushing the boundaries in terms of progressive benefit design. And we looked for like-minded partners who were attempting to disrupt the status quo in healthcare. And we were all impressed with what Progyny was attempting to do in this specific healthcare vertical of infertility care. And so we got the approval to move ahead with Progyny, and we added it as a covered benefit for the 2017 plan year. So then switching back to personal. So then I got married December 30th, 2016.
Okay.
And then fast forward to June timeframe of 2017, I wasn't yet pregnant. And my OB had told me to try for 6 months, kind of given my age and everything.
Okay. So you guys had been trying, but no luck so far.
Yeah. Since we got married, then I remember what's kind of colossal of the whole thing. I remember telling my OB, like, I don't want to be pregnant at my wedding, like as if it could, I still, even though I was like almost 38, like it's still,
Isn't
who knows what happened.
Funny when you think that you can control the narrative?
Yeah, it is. It's comical.
Yeah.
So I went for a test at the OB that in like an ovulation test, and it said I was ovulating. But then it was going to be several months before I could even get in to speak with her. And that's when I remembered, hey, what about that fertility coverage that I put in place? And so I contacted Progyny, and I went for my first appointment at a clinic in Kansas City where I live. And then we moved directly into IVF and my first egg retrieval in January of 2018. And that was after actually a procedure to have a polyp removed in the fall of 17. So, you think you're going to get started right away. And
how did you figure out you had the polyp?
They found it when I did kind of my first workup at that first REI. And so in that first egg retrieval, we retrieved 6 eggs, and one did make it to blastocyst and was chromosomally normal. And I remember wondering, like, is retrieving 6 eggs a good result or not? Like, I really had no idea at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I later learned that it is recommended, like, that you should aim for chromosomally normal embryos if your goal is to have 2 children.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being pleased, like, when I called Progyny, because I was now talking to them as a patient,
Right.
like, I had my plan sponsor and I worked with account management, but now I was also a patient of Progyny.
Mm-hmm.
And so I called, and so, I understood it from like a plan design perspective, but then you're actually going through it, then questions pop up. And so I called them to ensure, like, do I have to transfer this one embryo, or, and they said that I didn't have to transfer that sole embryo. So we decided to move forward with another round of IVF with the hopes of, obtaining a few more chromosomally normal embryos to,
Mm-hmm.
increases our chances of having 2 children.
Right.
So we started another stimulation, and that one was different from the first. And every time I went for an ultrasound, I could tell, like, they weren't finding much growth. And after 10 days of stimming, they said that we would cancel this cycle because my estrogen didn't increase as it should. And
so disappointing.
So disappointing. I didn't even understand, like, what do you mean cancel?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I felt like surely we could just do more injections, like, raise the meds,
Right.
and we'll get it where it needs to be. Like,
Right.
it never had even occurred to me that, like, canceling was an option.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, I had, like most people, like, these high highs and these low lows, these peaks and valleys, if you will. And, like, that was like my first valley
Mm-hmm.
in my IVF journey.
Right. It's
And
like, you don't even know what you don't know. Like, you're like, I didn't even realize that was a thing that could happen, because the first time it was like, went so swimmingly, or,
Right, exactly. Or that, like, 6 eggs in my first egg retrieval, like, I later, like, heard of people that got, like, like, younger people that got like 20 or 30 eggs. And I'm like, so 6 eggs, like, and then you learn it's a numbers game, and you're like, ideally, like, you want to aim for, retrieving as many eggs, because
right.
each phase in the journey, it's just like your odds go down and down.
Yeah. Well, it's a numbers game, but it's also like quantity versus quality, and like all that too, so everybody's so different.
So different. Yeah. So luckily for me, the canceled cycle didn't count against my coverage with Progyny. And so I was lucky I could try again.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this time I decided to get a second opinion from another physician locally. And he told me that I had about a 25% chance of conceiving, and that I had probably been too suppressed from the birth control. And that's why my second stim was unsuccessful.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I decided to move forward with this second physician for my third stimulation. And then this one progressed through egg retrieval, and I did obtain 3 blastocysts, but unfortunately, they were all chromosomally abnormal.
How did that feel to get those results?
It's so traumatizing to go through a full IVF cycle and just walk away with nothing.
Yep.
I mean, and I was so lucky to have coverage. Like, you can only imagine if you would paid $25,000 and they're like, and you have nothing to show.
As so many people do. I almost feel like more people are not covered than are these days, unfortunately, right?
That's still right. There's more and more people have coverage, but still it's not the majority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But since I had coverage, we decided to keep going. So we started my 4th stimulation, and, like, I was once again put on birth control a bit longer this time. And once again, my estrogen didn't increase. This was with the second doctor. And then the cycle was called off, this time, luckily, on day 5 of stims, not day 10. But at that point, like, I was in the depths of the valley of despair after this cancellation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was,
what did that look like for you, Arielle? What were the depths of despair? How did that?
Like, I really began to question if, like, this was going to work for us and if I would have a biological child. That was when I had the, like, realization that, like, this just might not work. And I think up until that point, I had, I guess I had heard of friends, like, it seemed like most people had success, like, okay, go do IVF. And it was for me at that point. And I remember talking to a friend and saying, like, I might not have a biological child. And I remember a conversation with my dad, who happens to be a physician, not an REI, but I remember saying to him also, having these thoughts that it might not work out. And he said to me, this isn't like orthopedics or cardiology, this is like life creation.
Yeah.
And it is so nuanced in that way. And when you think about it like that, it's like, wow, it is amazing that it even works,
It is amazing. And it's also so interesting that there's so many different factors that come into play, and so many ways that it could go off the rails, and so many things that have to work together And the timing has to be so right for it to work at all. I just like gave myself the chills saying that.
I know, me too.
I still feel, I don't know if you know my backstory, and if you don't, that's totally fine. But people listening probably do. I had one healthy embryo, and one shot of IVF for my secondary infertility. And I did the transfer and it did work. And like,
Amazing.
I did feel so lucky at the time, but now that I know what I know, I'm like, holy shit, I cannot believe that worked. And it still like blows my mind given all the, the odds and the stories of people that have done this round after round and, all the things. So
I agree. And the fact that people get pregnant naturally is such a miracle.
Right. We call them free babies in our fertility rallies.
I love that.
Those or like sex babies. We're like those free babies. But my first baby was a free baby, sex baby. So it's wild.
It is wild. Yeah. So I soon met this friend of a friend at this point in my journey who had traveled from Kansas City to Colorado to visit the Colorado Center for Reproductive Medicine. And she spoke highly of her experience there. So we decided to get a third opinion. And I was keenly aware of how many smart cycles I had left at this point. Like like this is what I have. And I wanted, at that point, I was like, I want the best of the best. And, CCRM. And I went specifically to Dr. Schoolcraft, like they had that reputation. Yeah. So we did a phone consult. I went for the 1-day workup, and I started on a new protocol. And I had, at this point, was like a peak. I had a renewed sense of optimism. And actually, when I told Dr. Schoolcraft about my canceled cycles, he said that he would never put a woman over 38 on birth control. So
interesting.
I was like, yes. So I progressed much faster on this cycle. And I did obtain one blastocyst, but it was also, unfortunately, chromosomally abnormal. Oh, so another one. So we then went into my 6th stem, which ended up being
how long had this been? Sorry to interrupt.
This is now time frame. This is summer of 18 now.
Okay.
We started trying like after I got married and at the end of December of 16. So like my 6th stimulation ended up being my 4th egg retrieval. It turned out to be my best turnout in terms of eggs and blastocysts. I ended up with 5 blastos. I was ecstatic. Like at last, a great harvest of eggs and a solid turnout of embryos. Yeah. And like, I felt that statistically speaking, like I should definitely get at least 1 to 2 normal embryos out of this batch. I felt positive about it.
Right.
And then it turned out that they were all abnormal except for one that was inconclusive.
Okay.
So Dr. Schoolcraft suggested like that I thaw and retest the inconclusive embryo. But he said at the time, given my history, he felt that it would likely be abnormal and we should think about transferring the one embryo that I did have and then move on to donor eggs if need be.
Okay.
And so while I waited on the PGTA retesting of my inconclusive embryo, I arranged for my normal embryo in Kansas City to be shipped to Lone Tree. And at that point, I wanted to do everything going forward at CCRM. Like I was attempting to minimize any future regrets, and like CCRM was my no regret strategy at that point in my journey. And then I also met with the donor egg team to learn more about that process.
Okay. Did you have any hesitation when it came to the notion of donor eggs?
I mean, I was sure, for sure, like thinking about like, this is so unfair. Like I wanted a biological child and I, was still trying to like get my arms around it. But at the same time, I was also like, I want a baby. And so I was pretty open to it. And he said like the fastest way to a baby is through donor egg. And so I was definitely like leaning towards that. Like I was ready to kind of dive into that if that was, where I needed to go.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by True Earth Laundry Detergent Eco Strips. True Earth's mission is to help reduce the billions of plastic household containers that end up in our landfills and oceans every year. They currently have household products to make your chores easier in the laundry room, the kitchen, and the bathroom. So a few weeks ago, guys, I got True Earth Laundry Detergent Eco Strips in the mail, and I got the fresh linen scented and the fragrance free. And on my next 2 loads of laundry, I used one of each kind. Okay, so I'm not exaggerating when I say that I am obsessed. These True Earth strips are smaller than the size of your hand, and all you do is take one out of the package, toss it in the machine with your clothes, and it makes everything come out fresh and clean and soft. They're so easy to use, and I honestly don't think I'll ever turn back to like a big jug laundry detergent again. Let's talk about the packaging. It comes in a super compact, recyclable paper envelope, and each one contains enough for 35 loads. To see the True Earth package sitting next to my giant plastic jug made me never, ever want to use anything but True Earth again. Think of the impact it has on the environment, and if people weren't using all of that plastic. I know that so many of you are into clean and toxin-free household products, so please know that True Earth is paraben-free, phosphate-free, free of added dyes, free of chlorine bleach, vegan, no animal testing, hypoallergenic, and readily biodegradable. It's also really travel-friendly. I could go on and on. So here's the best part. You can try True Earth today at true.earth/infertileaf and use code infertileaf to get 12% off your order. Again, that's tru.earth/infertileaf and use code infertileaf to get 12% off today. Thanks, True Earth. And now, a brief word from one of our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Avi. Avi is the obvious choice in health and wellness supplements. Their products range from collagen for your hair, skin, and nails, to weight loss solutions, to immune support, to hormone balance. Avi has more than 400,000 customers worldwide and has a Facebook community with over 65,000 active members. So guys, I got a box full of Avi products recently and I added them to my daily routine. One of their products that I want to talk about today is called Goodbye, and it's my new fave. So here's why. Avi's Goodbye is the perfect solution to hormonal balance issues, which include weight gain, hormonal acne, hot flashes, and so much more. Goodbye contains key ingredients such as DIM to help regulate estrogen production and KSM66 ashwagandha to help you feel relaxed and stress-free. And I must say that since adding Avi to my daily routine, I've had more energy and a clearer mind. So guess what, everybody? I think you guys can probably guess. You've probably heard enough of these podcast episodes to know that Infertile AF listeners can get 25% off today with code INFERTILEAF at myavi.com. That's myobvi.com. Use promo code INFERTILEAF and you'll get 25% off today. It's super Avi why you should do it. See what I did there? Let Avi help you reach your goals this summer. Again, go to myavi.com and use code INFERTILEAF for 25% off. Thanks, Avi.
But so my embryo shipped from Kansas City to Lone Tree. And on the day of its arrival, I received a call from the embryology lab that my inconclusive embryo was miraculously normal.
Oh my God.
So
wow.
Everyone was thrilled. Like, this was definitely a high peak. Like, I was in the clouds. And like Dr. Schoolcraft was surprised too. And he said I could transfer both of the embryos to increase my odds of achieving a singleton pregnancy. But I was afraid of the risk of twins. And honestly, like I was more afraid of transferring both and having my journey end there if it didn't take. And by the way, I was like still the plan sponsor that put this coverage into place. And the way I was able to make my business case for my company to add it was like through the mitigation of multiples and NICU babies. So I had all that playing kind of in my brain as well.
Oh my God, that's so complicated.
Yeah, it is. And so we moved forward with transferring the embryo from CCRM per their recommendation. Like it came from their lab. So they suggested transferring that one first. And so after 6 rounds of stimulation and 2 canceled cycles and 4 egg retrievals from 3 doctors, I had 2 chromosomally normal embryos. And I transferred on January 11th, 2019. And on Martin Luther King Day of 2019, I received the call that I was pregnant. And,
oh my gosh. So which one was it? The one from Kansas City?
No, it was the one I transferred the one from their lab. Yeah, they felt, I think it was, well, they don't, I had the rating from the lab in Kansas City, but they kind of say it's not from our lab. So we can't, until they defrost it, they can't kind of.
Okay. So they were rooting for the new
yeah. And it was
a
good, if she was like a day 5, 4AA, like that's a really strong embryo. So yeah. And she was hatching, she was hatching when we transferred. And
did you know it was a female?
Not at that point. I had asked if I had I told them not to tell me if it was the same gender, but they said it was one of each. And so I didn't know which one. So I know it was a girl or a boy. Yeah. Okay. And so Stella was born, and then we ended up doing my nurse called a local bakery. And so we did a gender reveal with some cupcakes, my husband and I. So that was fun.
So how did it feel to get that call that, it did indeed work after all that and that you were pregnant?
Oh, I mean, it was like, I honestly felt at that point, like even after my daughter was born, like I felt like I had found my resolve. it resolved with the National Infertility Association, finding whether you're going to be child free or you're going to go, adoption or whatever your journey might be, that you're resolved with it. And for a time, I felt like, okay, I found my resolve. I was thrilled to be this mother of my tiny miracle. But then I couldn't stop thinking about my baby in the freezer back in Colorado. And so in August of 21, I went back to CCRM for my one-day workup, and then back in September for the frozen embryo transfer. And I got a positive pregnancy test, and I was elated. And I kind of thought maybe getting the embryos was the difficult part, and somehow getting pregnant, that wasn't my issue.
Yeah.
But then going into my 6-week pregnancy check, I started to feel like something wasn't right. I didn't have any symptoms. And by this point in my prior pregnancy, morning sickness had set in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went, and I was remote. So I went to my OB. I went for my 6.5-week ultrasound, and there was nothing to be found. I had miscarried at some point from the beta to my 6.5-week ultrasound. And
I'm so sorry.
It's so crazy how, thank you. Everything can change in 60 seconds.
Totally.
You come in and the ultrasound tech is confirming your due date, and then 60 seconds later, you can just tell she's, wandering around, and
the look on their face.
Yeah. You're no longer pregnant. And so and it was so hard. I was devastated, and all the big raw feelings of IVF came barreling down on me once again. But this time it just seemed so final because I had no more embryos left. And I knew how fortunate and extremely blessed I was to have my daughter. But I was just stripped of the possibility of a family of 4. And it was all out of my control. And it just, once again, all the feelings of this is so unfair, just came back. And
totally. How are you and your husband doing?
It was hard. I mean, it was really hard. The grief from losing that second embryo, I'm still grieving today.
Yeah. And,
I'm so incredibly grateful to have my daughter. And I know how lucky I am given my journey, but now she's 3.5, and, she ask me for a sibling, now she says it kind of frequently, that she would like a sister. And I feel all kinds of sadness in my heart.
Yeah. That makes total sense to me. And I think that, grief is not linear, and sometimes it just hits you when you're not expecting it. You'll be just in the grocery store and you see a baby, or you hear a song, or something just strikes you, and it's just whoosh, washes over you. So I think it's to just validate that for anybody listening, that it's not grief really ever ends. It just comes in different forms and shapes and at different times, and it's unpredictable.
Yeah. I've often questioned, maybe I won't ever find my resolve,
Yeah.
Or maybe you just get used to the notion of this is what it's going to be.
Right. Yeah. So have you gotten to the point where the door is closed, or do you still have kind of possibilities of what might happen next, or where?
Yeah.
And you don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
I think it probably is closed. To be honest, I'm 44 now. And so, sometime a girlfriend recently asked if I would consider adoption, and I don't know. I think, I'm not sure. Yeah. I think it probably is closed at this point, but I think there's always a bit of you that wonders the what ifs,
Totally.
But I don't know if I'll take action. I don't know if I'll take action.
And it's whatever you say today, that might change 3 months from now or 6 months from now, and you're entitled to change your mind and all that stuff. So
yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see what.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about when you brought the Progyny stuff into your company. What was it about what they were doing that was so different and groundbreaking and just appealing as somebody that would work with them before? Because full disclosure, you do work for Progyny now, and we'll get into all that. I want to hear about your job. So you're the SVP Employer Market Strategy. Is that your title?
Yeah, okay. That's my title.
All right. So we'll talk about that. But before that, just before you were even working with them or for them, what was it about what they were doing that really struck a chord?
Yeah. What was, our guiding principles and our benefits philosophy, if you will, was we felt that if you put your emphasis on highest quality and an exemplar member experience, that then you'd have improved outcomes and reduced cost over time. So we weren't some teams might specifically be looking for cost cutting measures, or what's the best, how do we get the best cost? And we really pivoted and thought about highest quality and member experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we met with, and we thought a lot about like the health economy, like in the US, like the main constituents of the health economy are the payer, the payer, which is often in a self-insured company, is the company that's taking on the risk and paying the bills. And then you have the patient and the provider. And we thought about the incentive alignment because broadly in the US healthcare system, like there's perverse incentives across these three constituents. And so what we were trying to do is realign the otherwise perverse incentives in US healthcare to create good consumers of health and care and good providers of health and care. And so what we found in Progyny was like Progyny set out with the goal of like, how do we obtain healthy singleton pregnancies? Like, how do we have healthy babies? And then they backed into what does plan design need to look like? What does a network need to look like? What does that member experience need to look like? And like, let's go from the end goal and let's back into what we need to put in place in order to achieve that goal. And they thought a lot about the incentive alignment between the docs and the patients and the payer. And so it really aligned to how we were thinking. And we were trying to like disrupt healthcare. It was a healthcare technology company. And so like the mission of the company transcended into what we provided for our employees, our associates and their families. And so this like it's the fact that Progyny was then also setting out to kind of disrupt healthcare in this vertical and thinking about it so similarly that it really aligned well. And so it was easy to get our chief medical officer on board and our chief people officer and so on. And ultimately I was able to make the case because health plans that don't cover fertility, like you're always going to cover one, people are doing it. They're still doing it. They're finding a way and they're often taking out substantial debt. And when you're taking out so much debt and you have so much riding on it, like you're not making evidence-based decisions, you're making cost-based decisions. And so then that might not lead to the best outcomes. And so we had quads born prior to 2016, and each baby was over $1 million. And so by putting Progyny in place, we could normalize that spend. So instead of having these like, outliers that were so expensive that you could put in coverage, you would that you're covering right fertility. So it's expected spend year over year. It's normalized in your numbers and in the data that you pull. So you don't have to worry about, you're essentially eliminating these big peaks. And you're doing it in a really evidence-based way. So it was really neat. We added it. And then ultimately like hundreds of babies were born that might not otherwise be here today. And so it was.
And do you feel like having gone through it yourself, now that you're on the other side and, doing the job that you do, are you able to, you get it, right? Are you able to empathize with people more and like advocate for people more? Like, tell me about how that all plays in.
Yeah, definitely. So I started actually advocating with Resolve, with the National Infertility Association. They have something called Advocacy Day. And so I started advocating at like at the federal level back in 2019. I was actually pregnant with Stella, and it's so empowering to be able to speak to you join with your other members of your state. Right. And then, and in 2019, we did it in person. And then subsequently it's been virtual, but you join with other members of your state delegation and you speak to your senators and your congressmen and women. And it's so empowering to speak and to see that you can make an impact.
Yeah.
And also I would say that your voice matters. And you can, speak to your HR department, and it is so impactful for, we're all HR teams are pulling data and understanding what the market is doing and trying to put forth, strategies that will change the lives of the members on their health plan. But to have stories and testimonials from the members that they can then weave into the presentations to senior leadership, it makes a big impact. And so we have a stat at Progyny that 64% of the reason why employers put in fertility coverage is because they heard from their employees. So your voice absolutely matters. And I think that I saw that from both sides. I've seen it play out from both sides. So I would definitely say that to remember your voice and to be an advocate, not only for yourself, when you're going through the journey and to do the research and and come prepared to your appointments, but also to be able to, take that and to kind of advocate on behalf of others that are going
Absolutely.
through it.
So for someone who's listening that isn't sure, like where to start with that, with the advocacy piece, what would you recommend? What are like kind of some first steps?
Yeah. So I would say two things. I mean, one, you can go to progyny.com, PROGYNY.com. And we have on our website, we have a place that can give you tips in terms of going to your HR team. So that's a great place to start for if you're trying to, talk to your HR department around the importance of fertility coverage and help them to understand the need. That's a great place to start. And there's a toolkit. I would say there's also Resolve also has, it's called Coverage at Work. They have a component on the Resolve website. And so you could kind of pull both of those, and that will help you in terms of coming up with how to speak to it at work. And then Resolve, if you can go on their website to Advocacy Day. It happens annually. And then there's also things that come up throughout the year on a state level. And you can get involved both like the state and the federal level, and Resolve will help you figure out how to do that. So it's those are I would say some of the tools at your fingertips. That's
okay.
Really easy. Yeah.
And then just in terms of infertility and how difficult it is, and going through IVF and going through treatment, whatever path you go down, what do you wish that you knew then that you know now?
I learned pretty early on in my fertility journey that like more often than not, it's a marathon and not a sprint. And there's a lot of like, hurry up and wait. And honestly, at the beginning, I thought, okay, I'll do this cycle and then we'll transfer. And then baby should be here by X date, and like, you kind of think through. And then I quickly realized like, that was not going to be my reality. And I also learned that, we're all different and no two journeys are the same. It was surprising to me that each month your body will respond differently to a stim cycle, and it can take a few times to figure out like what cocktail of drugs your body responds best to. I learned that some people will be successful at their local clinics, and others, might need to seek more specialized care at clinics that are staffed to do more personalized protocols and have sophisticated embryology labs. And I learned that it's okay to seek second opinions, or even third opinions. And that like doctors aren't offended. At first, I felt kind of guilty about, I was cheating on my doctor to go and speak to another one. And like, that is okay. And they're used to this. Like, it is a-okay. And like, honestly, you should, because you should be armed with the more information, the better. Right. And like, you have limited shots at this. And, if, whether you have coverage or not, like it's not like no one really has infinite number of times they can try. So,
Yeah, it's such a good point. Cause I think that people, and I was certainly like this as well, you think your doctor is like, the God in the situation, and you can't buck back, or you can't bring them other suggestions, or you can't kind of, not like doctor shop, but you can't get a second opinion because you're worried that you're going to offend them. So I'm really glad that you said that. Cause I do think people know now that like, they're working for you. This is your money. And a lot of times, if you're not covered, the stakes are even higher. So it's okay to do your research. And so many of the doctors that we've interviewed, I've interviewed on the podcast, or like that have spoken at Fertility Rally Live, for example, so many of them have been like, no, we love that. Like, we're not offended at all. We want you. Sometimes you bring stuff to the table that we're like, oh yeah, that's actually a good idea. Let's try that.
Yeah, so right. Absolutely.
I think there's more of a atmosphere these days where that's more welcomed, and it's more, like relationship between the doctor and the patient.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad to hear that. I think it's true. It's okay to do your own research and ask questions, and like, you are your best advocate.
Okay, everybody. Thank you so much to Arielle for sharing her story. Guys, definitely check out progyny.com if you want to hear more about smarter fertility benefits and insurance. They're doing groundbreaking stuff, really cool things, and they're super easy to talk to, and they'll help answer questions and stuff too. So thank you for listening. Also, please check out Fertility Rally, my community. my family. We would love to have you guys. We're growing every single month, more members from all over the country, all over the world, actually. We're doing these awesome IRL events. We have 4 to 5 support groups a week, and we have more in the works. Stay tuned on that. We really want to give you guys everything that you need. So this is a safe space. It's a place to find community. It's a place to get your questions answered. It's a place to just feel supported and empowered and loved. And I would love for you to check it out. So the membership opens the first week of every month. You can always ask me if you have any questions. DM me at Fertility Rally or DM me at Infertile Stories. And again, if you have 2 seconds to rate and review this podcast, it would be greatly appreciated. So as always, thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you guys next time.